He came to our house to bless it, to offer prayers and scripture, nothing more. But the way his eyes lingered on mine, the warmth of his hand on my shoulder, it felt different, unexpected, dangerous. That night changed everything.
Because when Pastor Elijah visited, he didn't just offer guidance. He uncovered a truth in me I had never been ready to face.
He came that Sunday evening for what was supposed to be a simple house blessing and tea. Nothing special. My mother had invited him after church, proudly saying our new pastor was finally going to bring real holiness into this house. She said it half joking, but I could hear the weight behind her words. Ever since my dad passed, she'd thrown herself deeper into the church, clinging to faith like it was the only thing keeping us from falling apart. I didn't argue. I never did. I was the quiet one, the obedient one, the one who bowed his head when told, who recited verses without flinching, who never gave her a reason to worry. Except for the part of me I never spoke out loud. The part I buried so deep, I sometimes forgot it was even there. Until he walked through our door. Elijah wasn't what I expected when they said, young new pastor. I imagined mid-40s, stern-faced, maybe graying. Instead, the man who stepped into our home looked barely 35, smooth brown skin, sharp cheekbones, and a voice that sounded like it could make you confess things you didn't even know you were holding. He had this quiet power about him, like the calm before a thunderstorm. "Thank you for having me," he said, warmly shaking my mother's hand with both of his, like it truly meant something. She beamed. "Oh, Pastor, we've been looking forward to it. This house needs your presence, and your cinnamon tea," he added with a grin, making her laugh. Then he turned to me, and something shifted. His handshake was firm, but it wasn't the grip that made my throat tighten. It was the way he looked at me. Straight through me. Past the polite smile. Past the clean-cut Sunday clothes. Past the practiced silence. "And you must be Micah," he said. "I am," I replied. He smiled softly. "It's good to meet you." I let go of his hand too quickly. Dinner passed in the usual way. My mother did most of the talking. My grandmother chimed in here and there, and I sat quietly, stealing glances when I thought no one would notice. Elijah listened with full attention, asked thoughtful questions, laughed at all the right moments. He was good, maybe too good. Afterward, we moved to the living room for the blessing. "Would you like to pray together?" he asked. My mother lit up like a Christmas tree. "Micah," she said, "go stand with the pastor. He'll lead." I nodded and stepped forward. Elijah placed a hand on my shoulder as he began. His voice dropped lower, smooth, gentle, almost melodic. I closed my eyes, trying to focus on the words, but the way his thumb moved slightly, like a slow, intentional stroke. It lasted only a second longer than it should have, but I felt it. And my heart pounded. I opened my eyes just enough to glance sideways at him. His were closed, brow relaxed in quiet concentration. I told myself I imagined it, that I was projecting old feelings I'd buried since I was 13. But when the prayer ended and he looked at me again, his gaze lingered. Just a little too long. Later that evening, after the tea was poured and the small talk faded, Elijah asked my mother if he could speak to me privately. My heart jumped. "Of course," she said, not even hesitating. "Micah, take him to the den." We sat across from each other in the quiet room, the soft hum of the ceiling fan filling the silence. "You seem thoughtful," he said. I blinked. "Sorry?" "Quiet, focused, like something's on your mind." I shrugged, trying not to look at him. "That's just how I am." He studied me for a long moment. "You don't have to tell me anything, Micah," he said gently. "But I want you to know, I've seen that look before, in other young men, the ones who sit where you are now, carrying something they're afraid to name." My breath caught. I don't know what you mean." He didn't push, just nodded. "If you ever do, I'm here." That should have been it. A kind pastor offering support. But the way he looked at me when he said it, it wasn't pity. It wasn't brotherly concern. It was something else. Something softer. Something sharper. When he stood to leave, he placed a hand on my arm. Not my shoulder. Not a casual pat. a slow, grounding touch, just above my wrist. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I sat in that room long after the front door closed, long after my mom started the dishwasher, long after my grandmother fell asleep in her chair. I sat there staring at the hand he'd touched, trying to tell myself it meant nothing, trying, and failing. Because something about it felt like a beginning, and deep in my chest, I knew. This was only the start, and I had no idea where it would lead. Pastor Elijah returned that Thursday evening. My mother had invited him again after Sunday's visit, thrilled by how warm and grounded he'd seemed. She sang his praises. I looked up and met his eyes. Just for a second, he smiled at me like it meant something. And just like that, I felt it again. That stirring I couldn't explain. The one I'd spent years trying to ignore. After the last time he touched me, I thought I could silence it. I was wrong. Dinner passed the way these dinners always did. My grandmother nodded off after the soup. My mother stepped away to take a call from my aunt. Elijah and I were left alone at the table, sipping lukewarm tea. The air was thick with unspoken things. I wanted to apologize, he said quietly, turning his mug slowly in his hands. If I made you uncomfortable last time, I didn't mean to. You didn't, I said, maybe too fast. I mean, you didn't make me uncomfortable. His eyes searched mine. Are you sure? I nodded, my hand resting near the edge of the table, just an inch from his. It wasn't bad. He leaned forward slightly. Micah, do you trust me? The question made my throat tighten. I swallowed hard and nodded. Yeah, I do. His expression softened. You don't have to say anything if you're not ready. But I meant what I said last time. If something's weighing on you, if there's something you've never said to anyone, I'm here. I stared into my tea. The steam was gone. It was just a cup of silence now. I've always done what I was supposed to, I said slowly. I followed the rules, went to church, got good grades. I never caused trouble, never strayed. Elijah didn't interrupt. He just listened. And I thought if I did everything right, the part of me that didn't belong would disappear. When I looked up, his eyes were calm, but focused. He didn't ask me to explain. He didn't have to. There's something inside me, I whispered. Something I buried so deep I forget it's there, until it shows up in dreams, in feelings I can't control. And every time I think I've shut it out, it finds a way back in. He leaned in slightly, his voice low and steady. You're not broken, Micah. I blinked at him. But the Bible says a lot of things, he said gently but firmly. It's been used to shame, to silence, to exclude, but that doesn't mean God ever wanted it that way. I stared at him, lips parted, unsure how to respond. I know what it feels like, he said, to beg God to take it away, to believe that if you're good enough, maybe it'll disappear. That maybe you'll wake up one day and be someone else. Tears stung behind my eyes. I hated how easily he was seeing through me. What happened to you? I asked quietly. I broke, he said. I tried to marry a woman once. She was kind. But I couldn't love her the way she deserved. I spent years building a version of myself the world could accept. And then it all collapsed. I hadn't noticed how close. I'd never let another young man feel like he was alone in this. I looked down at our hands. His thumb rested gently across my knuckles. Warm, steady. We stayed like that for a while. Then my mother's voice rang out from the hallway. Pastor, would you like another cup of tea? We flinched apart instantly. Elijah cleared his throat, straightened his posture. Yes, thank you, that would be lovely, he called back. When she entered, smiling and unaware, she poured him another cup. She glanced at me. You're good for him, Pastor, she said. Micah talks more when you're around. It's nice. Elijah gave her a soft, unreadable smile. He's easy to talk to. He didn't look at me again for the rest of the evening. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I stepped out onto the porch. The air was cool and still. I wrapped a blanket around myself and sat on the top step. His voice, his words, his hand brushing mine, it all played back in my mind like a song I couldn't turn off. The screen door creaked behind me. I turned. He stood in the doorway, a shadow in the dark. "Can I sit with you?" he asked. I nodded, unable to speak. He sat down beside me, our shoulders just barely touching beneath the blanket. We sat in silence, letting the night hold space for everything we couldn't say out loud. Then, after what felt like forever, he reached beneath the blanket and took my hand again. This time, I didn't flinch. "I shouldn't be here," he whispered, his breath warm against my cheek. "I don't want you to leave," I whispered back. He turned to me slowly, and when our eyes met, there was no more hiding. His hand rose to my jaw, his fingers trembling. He leaned in, pausing only for a breath, then his lips brushed mine. Soft, barely there, but real. He pulled back slightly. "Micah." I kissed him again before he could finish. This one wasn't a question. It was an answer. When we finally pulled away, I could feel his heartbeat beneath the sleeve of his sweater. He rested his forehead against mine, eyes closed. I've waited years to feel something like this, and not be afraid of it. "I'm still scared," I admitted. "Me too," he said, "but not right now." We sat there under the stars, the silence between us finally honest. And I knew, whatever this was, whatever it became, I wasn't alone anymore, because that kiss wasn't a mistake. And what was happening between us was only just beginning. Sunday morning came with the usual hum of routine. My mother ironed dresses before sunrise, humming hymns beneath her breath. The smell of fried plantains and black tea drifted through the house. I moved on autopilot, shirt tucked, belt tight, tie knotted. I kept my head down, but inside I was spinning. I hadn't seen Elijah since the porch. I wasn't even sure it had really happened. That kiss felt like a deafening, holy silence. When we arrived at church, he was already at the pulpit, flipping through his worn leather Bible like nothing had changed. He looked calm, polished, perfect. But when his eyes swept the room and landed on me, they stayed, just a beat too long. That was all it took to unravel me again. The sermon that day was on honesty of the heart. Elijah spoke about confession, about not running from truth, no matter how painful it felt. His words were fire. And I swear he wasn't speaking to the room. He was speaking to me. After the service, I slipped out early. The weight of everything unsaid was pressing too hard against my ribs. I was halfway down the sidewalk when I heard his voice behind me. "Micah." I turned, trying to look casual, but my throat was dry. He caught up, holding a stack of papers. "You forgot the youth group sign-up sheet," he said. But his tone held something else, something unspoken. "Oh," I said dumbly. "Right. Thanks." His fingers brushed mine as he handed it over. Too long. Too intentional. He leaned in and whispered, "Will you stay after choir on Tuesday? I'd like to speak with you." I nodded, before I even knew what I was agreeing to. In the soft fabric of his shirt, he wrapped his arms around me, and the tension that had been stretching between us for days snapped in a single, breathless moment. He led me gently backward until I bumped against the edge of the desk. His hand slid down my back, slow, deliberate, pulling me closer. "Micah," he murmured against my mouth, "you can stop me any time." But I didn't. I couldn't. My fingers moved over his chest, memorizing the feel of muscle beneath cotton. He pulled back just enough to look at me, eyes heavy, lips parted. "We should stop," he said. I swallowed. "Should we?" He kissed me again, harder this time, his fingers slipping beneath the hem of my shirt, grazing bare skin. I gasped, hips bucking forward. He stilled. "This is dangerous," he breathed. "I know, and I don't care." Then everything blurred. He turned me slowly, my back pressing against the door now, his hands on either side of my head. He kissed down my neck, his tongue trailing fire across my skin. My shirt lifted. His hand found my waist. My body ached, buzzed, begged for more. We didn't go all the way, not that night. But we danced along the edge of it, dangerously close, until our foreheads were pressed together again, both of us shaking. When it finally ended, we stood in the center of the room, breathless, undone. He cupped my face with both hands, looking at me like I was something fragile he didn't want to break. "I've never touched someone like that before," he admitted, voice raw. "Not because I didn't want to, but because I never let myself." I nodded, too dazed to speak. "I should take you home," he whispered. "I know." He stepped away slowly, his touch lingering like heat even after it was gone. We didn't talk during the ride back. We didn't need to. Everything we were afraid of was already in motion. And I knew, as I watched the church fade in the rearview mirror, my hands still trembling in my lap, that wasn't just a moment. It was the beginning of the storm. And there was so much more to come. It was the rain that set the mood that night. Not a storm, just a soft, steady pattern tapping gently against the windows. My mother was away at an overnight women's retreat with her church group. My grandmother was tucked in by 8 p.m., as usual. The house was quiet, too quiet, yet it hummed with a current I couldn't explain, like something was coming. At 9:12, my phone buzzed. A simple message: "I'm outside." My heart jumped before I could stop it. I pulled on a hoodie and crept downstairs barefoot, avoiding the creaky boards. When I opened the door, Pastor Elijah stood on the porch, hands in his coat pockets, hair damp from the rain. The porch light, and yet here you are. He didn't respond right away. His eyes searched mine, like he was looking for a reason to turn back, but whatever he found there must have settled the debate. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside without a word. He moved quietly, shaking rain from his coat before hanging it on the rack. I led him to the living room, the dim lamplight casting just enough glow to feel safe but not exposed. He sat on the edge of the couch. I stood, unsure where to go, how to begin. Elijah looked up at me. "Micah, if I stay tonight, things might change between us. Are you ready for that?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I don't know. But I don't want to keep pretending I don't feel this." He stood and closed the distance between us. His hand rose slowly, brushing the side of my face with a reverence that made my skin shiver. "Neither do I," he said softly. "Not anymore." Then he kissed me. This time there was no hesitation, no pulling back. His lips were soft, but certain. His hands found my waist like they'd been aching to. I melted into him, gripping the front of his sweater, needing something to hold on to because the floor no longer felt stable. We moved together, wordless and breathless. His hand slipped beneath my hoodie, fingertips grazing my spine, making me arch into him. He kissed down my jaw, my neck, slow, careful, like he was memorizing every part of me. "Tell me if you want me to stop," he whispered against my skin. I shook my head. "Don't stop. Please. Don't." He guided me gently to the couch, and I let myself fall with him. Our legs tangled, our hands explored. I couldn't believe how natural it felt. How right. His body against mine felt like it had always belonged there. He paused, hovering just above me, eyes dark and full of something I couldn't name. "You're shaking." "I've never done this," I admitted, voice barely audible. "I know," he said. "I'll be careful." And he was. Everything about him was careful. The way he kissed my chest, the way his fingers moved, the way he whispered my name between kisses like it meant something sacred. The air grew heavier, sweeter. My skin glowed under his hands. Clothes came off slowly, reverently. He kissed every new inch of skin like it was a vow he couldn't say out loud. My breath hitched when he touched me fully. My back arched off the couch. I clung to him, gasping into his neck as he moved lower, taking me apart with patience and precision. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't reckless. It was intentional, consuming. Quiet in the loudest possible way. Time slipped away. When we finally collapsed into each other, our bodies slick and tangled beneath the throw blanket, Elijah exhaled deeply, pressing his face into my shoulder. He held me tightly, as if letting go might undo the entire night. We didn't speak for a long time. We just breathed. Eventually, I turned to him, studying the soft lines of his face, the sadness behind his tired eyes. "Do you regret it?" I asked. He paused. "No. I regret waiting this long to let it happen. I traced a line down his chest, feeling his heartbeat still racing beneath the surface. What happens now? I don't know, he whispered. But tonight, I just wanted to feel like myself, and with you, I do. He kissed my forehead, then pulled me tighter, resting his chin on the top of my head. I'm scared, I said into the hollow of his throat. Me too, he replied. But I think I'd be more afraid of losing this, of losing you. We stayed on that couch for hours, barely sleeping, just holding, breathing, listening to the rain. By morning, the world hadn't changed, but I had. I'd crossed a threshold I could never uncross, and I didn't want to. Because in his arms, I felt something I never expected. Not shame, not sin, but safety. And that feeling was more dangerous than anything we'd done, because now I knew what it felt like to be wanted, and I wasn't sure I could ever go back to pretending I wasn't. The day after Elijah spent the night, I woke up alone. The couch was still warm on one side. The blanket tangled around my legs. His scent lingered, faint but unmistakable. My heart sank the second I noticed the silence. No murmured greeting from the hallway. Just the ticking of the wall clock and the distant hum of the refrigerator. He was gone. I sat up slowly, every inch of my body aching. Some of it physical, some of it something else. I pulled the blanket tighter around myself, the ache of absence settling in before the sun had even risen. A note sat on the coffee table, folded neatly. My name was written in smooth cursive. Micah, I had to leave early before your mom returned. Last night was more than I can explain, but we need to be careful. Please, trust me. Elijah. I read it 3 times before pressing it to my chest. It wasn't a goodbye, but it wasn't a promise either. By the time my mom returned that evening, I had scrubbed every trace of him from the living room. I remade the couch, fluffed the pillows, Febrezed the throw blanket like my life depended on it. She walked through the door, cheerful and unaware. Everything okay? She asked, setting her bags down. Yeah, I replied. Just a quiet day. I spent the rest of the week trying to stay busy, but no amount of chores or music or half-finished journal entries could quiet the thoughts that kept circling back to him. What we did, what it meant, whether he felt it too, or if I was just a moment of weakness for a man still fighting his own demons. I didn't hear from him, not once. No calls. He came to our house to bless it, to offer prayers and scripture, nothing more. But the way his eyes lingered on mine, the warmth of his hand on my shoulder, it felt different, unexpected, dangerous. That night changed everything. Because when Pastor Elijah... He came over that Sunday evening for what was supposed to be a simple house blessing and tea. Nothing special. My mother had invited him after church, proudly announcing that our new pastor was finally going to bring real holiness into our home. She said it half-jokingly, but I could hear the weight beneath her words. Since Dad passed, she'd thrown herself deeper into the church, clinging to faith like it was the only thing holding us together. I didn't argue. I never did. I was the quiet one, the obedient one, the one who bowed his head on command, who recited verses without flinching, who never gave her a reason to doubt, except for the part of me I never spoke aloud. That part was buried so deep, even I tried to forget it existed. Until he showed up. Elijah wasn't what I expected. When they said, young pastor, I imagined someone mid-40s, stern-faced and gray-tempered. But the man who walked into our home looked barely 35, smooth brown skin, sharp cheekbones, a voice that could make you confess things you didn't know you were holding in. He had this quiet power about him, like the calm before a thunderstorm. Thank you for having me, he said warmly, shaking my mother's hand with both of his like he truly meant it. She beamed. Oh, Pastor, we've been looking forward to it. This house needs your presence, and your cinnamon tea. He smiled, adding, I brought some, with a grin that made her laugh. Then he turned to me. His handshake was firm, but it wasn't the grip that made my throat tighten. It was the way he looked at me, direct, like he saw past the polite smile I gave, past the clean-cut Sunday clothes, past the practiced silence. And you must be Micah, he said. I am, I replied, too quickly. It's good to meet you. I let go of his hand too fast. Dinner passed the usual way. My mother did most of the talking, my grandmother chimed in now and then, and I sat quietly, stealing glances when I thought no one noticed. Elijah listened with care, asked thoughtful questions, laughed at the right moments. He was good, maybe too good. After dinner, we moved to the living room for the blessing. He asked if we'd like to pray together, and my mother lit up like a Christmas tree. "Micah," she said, "go stand with the pastor. He'll lead." I nodded and stepped forward. Elijah placed a hand on my shoulder. His voice was low, gentle, almost melodic. I closed my eyes, trying to focus on the prayer, but all I could feel was the warmth of his palm, the way his thumb moved slightly, like a stroke, slow, intentional. It lasted only a second longer than necessary, but I noticed. My heart pounded. I opened my eyes just enough to glance at him. His were still closed, brow relaxed in concentration. I tried to convince myself it was just in my head. Just me, projecting feelings I'd been trying to silence since I was 13. But when the prayer ended and he looked at me again, his gaze lingered, just a beat too long. That evening, after tea had been poured and small talk had run dry, Elijah asked my mother if he could speak to me privately. My heart jumped. "Of course," she said. "Micah, take him to the den." We sat across from each other, the ceiling fan humming softly above us. "You seem thoughtful," he said finally. I blinked. "Sorry?" "Quiet, focused, like something's on your mind." I shrugged. "That's just how I am." He studied me. "You don't have to say anything, Micah, but I've seen that look before, in other young men. One's carrying something they're afraid to name." My breath caught. "I don't know what you mean." He didn't push, just nodded, voice calm. "If you ever do, I'm here." That should have been it. Just a kind pastor offering support. But the way he looked at me after, it wasn't pity. It wasn't brotherly concern. It was something else. And when he stood to leave, he touched my arm, not my shoulder. Not a casual pat, a slow, grounding touch just above the wrist. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. I sat in that room long after he left, staring at the hand